A warm welcome and compliment of the season to our esteemed viewers at home, and it's nice to have you join us on today's edition of Democracy and the Rule of Law. My name is Judith Renua, and as usual, the table is set for us to discuss issues that is trending in the country. And today on the program, we're taking a look at the Edo APC crisis, which has taken another dimension, defying reconciliatory moves by several stakeholders in the party, and also the defection of Pastor Ize Iyamu to the party ahead the 2020 governorship election in that state. And also on Thursday, ex-AGF of the Federation, that is Adoke, was arrested and taken into the custody of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for offences bordering on fraud, amongst others. These are the two topics we're taking a look at on today's edition of Democracy and the Rule of Law. Do stay with us and don't go anywhere as I welcome to the table our legal practitioners. It's nice to have you on the table, Barrister Joe Mokedi.
It's my pleasure. Viewers, I greet you. I wish you Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Barrister Benjamin Ode is also here.
Thank you, Judith. Merry Christmas to our viewers out there.
Thank you. We'll manage your voice anyhow.
Yes,
all right. And Barrister Sarah Mary, I see you're already in the mood for Christmas. You're welcome.
Indeed. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Lady Judith, for having me. And I wish the viewers Merry Christmas and the most prosperous New Year and compliments of the season.
All right, I'll start with you. You're from Edo State, and Edo State is on the spotlight here on today's edition of the program. This is a crisis which started off on a note where many political pundits couldn't really say how it is going to end. Many foresaw an end in sight when it just started, but as we have now, it is taking another dimension. What would you say, briefly before we go into what we have on the table, about what is going on in Edo State? I mean, within the APC in that state, which is a ruling party.
It's nothing but power tussle. It's just a struggle for dominance and control. Who controls the levels of power in Edo State politics? And it appears as if the former governor, who is now the chairman of the national chairman of the party, is bent on maintaining and retaining the levels of power. And the incumbent governor is not satisfied, playing the second fiddle. And from the happenings of the World Congresses that took place last year and then sometime early this year, I think the signs were there that apparently Adams Oshiomhole, comrade Adams Oshiomhole, was not really satisfied with having Governor Obaseki at the helm of affairs, and the foundations were being laid for that would make it impossible for him to contest for a second term. So it became necessary for the governor to also protect himself. And the stage was set, the first salvo, really, where because before the inauguration of this new National House of Assembly, there were signs. There were signs that it was not too well for the relationship between Adams Oshiomhole and Obaseki. You have to remember that more or less it took Adams Oshiomhole all his political might and artistry to be able to persuade the other APC party leaders in Edo State to accept Godwin Obaseki as the gubernatorial candidate
and successor. Yeah.
Yes, and also to Philip Shuaibu. If you remember, Philip Shuaibu is the deputy governor. As at that time, he was a member of the House of Rep. And if you look at the political configuration of Edo State, you have Edo North, where Adams Oshiomhole comes from. You have Edo Central, which is for the Ishan people. And then the Edo South, you which is the most highly populated in terms of votes for the Benin's. Now, Adams Oshiomhole comes from Edo North. And then his deputy was from Edo South. So ordinarily, there were permutations that perhaps the governorship candidate may either come from Edo Central or Edo South. Or if he comes from Edo South, then the deputy gubernatorial candidate will come from Edo Central, from the Ishan. But Comrade Oshiomhole was able to muscle his way and ensure that his kinsman, Philip Shaibu from Edo North, became the deputy governor. But we have to understand the cultural milieu in which Adams Oshiomhole is operating. What may succeed in other parts of the country, because the people of Edo State, we are known for hero worship. We are not for one-man dominance.
All right, I get where you're going.
Yes.
But let me quickly hold you there. And
yes.
Obaseki has come out to say the reason he's at loggerheads with the chairman of the party is because he wants to have access to the state treasury, while Oshiomhole, on the other hand, is saying this is a governor who does not want to work with the members of the party. He wants to send everybody out of the party, and he is not going to allow that. Now, do you see a sort of godfather, godson sort of rivalry here in Edo State, Barrister Benjamin?
Yes, that is actually what is playing out in Edo State. I think beyond, as to add up to what my, co-panelists have just said, it's clear that what is going on in Edo State is all about godfatherism, control by the godfathers of incumbents that they had earlier installed. I think that is what is happening. And of course, we all know that this is not new to the Nigerian politics. It's been there and it will still be there for the time being. But it's interesting because for some of us, we believe that what is happening in Edo State is good for democracy. It's good for democracy because, the situation where the godfather will install his supposed godson, and then thereafter the godson will now go against or start going against the godfather. I think it's good for democracy. It shows that the current person in power, has a mind of his own, and of course that is what governance should be, and that is the way it should be. Now, the current governor of Edo State, Mr. Obaseki, said that before Governor Adams Oshiomhole became governor of Edo State, he worked for him to get there. And that the fund that was organized for his election then, he was at the RON. So now that Adams Oshiomhole became governor and he left and now installed him, I think Adams Oshiomhole expected more from him. And of course, unfortunately, he wasn't getting what he was expecting from him. And that is now putting them at loggerheads. So it's not a new development. This is expected and actually is playing out. But of course, let's see how far it's going to take them. But of course, at the end of the day, this will not be in the interest of the party called APC. I think that is the most, APC at the end of the day will be the victim of all of this, because PDP is just hibernating by the corner. But let's see how this power play and how far this power play will take them. But of course, we know that power play, godfatherism and godson has been the bane of the Nigerian politics. And we pray and we watch to see the day when this scenario will be brought to an end in Nigeria.
All right, Barrister Nwokedi, he did say this is not a new scenario in our political space in Nigeria, where a governor, upon the expiration of his 8-year tenure, wants his own personal peak to hold sway in his stead after he leaves. But what do you now say about these same governors, upon the expiration of their own tenures, want to have a say in what goes on in the state with whoever that is installed, the anointed candidate. What do you make of this?
For me, I would say it's like one is greed, and insatiable appetite for power.
You don't see the love of the people there.
There is no love of the people. There's no love of the people. Except if the current governor is not performing up to expected kind of targets as a leader. Because once you have been a governor of a state and you exhausted your tenure of 8 years, for me, you're a statesman. You are to be heard and not seen. When things go wrong, you call the attention of the governor, you advise. You talk to the people, you give your opinion, you talk to the people. Not necessarily that you become a player. You have actually done your turn. You have finished your tenure and you have gone home. Then the person you installed, that's where the problem comes from. I don't even know why they don't learn their lessons. Somebody said that what sent George Makalo to prison today was the person he installed, Joe Dodge. I even won an election for him when he was in prison. I even almost sacrificed him to enable him to be sworn in. Richard Okorocha is losing almost everything because he wanted to install somebody and the thing collapsed. However, Ajmobi wanted to install somebody in Oyo State. It collapsed.
Same in Osun
State.
Oyo State.
Oyo
State rather.
Yeah, the state rather. The state was what destroyed Daniel's dynasty. He wanted to install somebody. Obasanjo wanted to install somebody. Olori and Isiaka and things like that time. And two of them lost out. Zamfara State, we saw how Power Tozo also destroyed the state. In Rivers State also, Amechi finished his tenure for 8 years and came back. Even when the party is not the ruling party, wanted to install, he had issue with Magno Sabe, and they started fighting, and they destroyed Rivers State. But the problem we have is that it seems that our leaders don't learn their lessons. You have finished your tenure, you leave, allow the governor to do what will enable him to succeed in delivering the dividends of democracy to the people. You have party laws, you have your party rules. Whatever you are doing must be in conformity with the rules of the party. Your party has a rule. Don't try to manipulate it. Don't try to go outside the scope of what the rules say. Don't try to bend the rules so that you manipulate the governor. It's because in most cases we glorify this godfatherism. And some of them now believe that it's a birthright. That once you have assumed a political office and be able to finish your tenure, then you continue to dictate what goes on in the states. That's not how it, even in Anambra State, same thing also almost played out between Peter Obi and Willie Obiano, but they were able to manage it, not allow it to skyrocket into societal kind of observation. It's played out there. Even when Peter Obi was going for vice president and other things, it was a very scary kind of situation that people managed. It was managed. But the point is that why bringing somebody to succeed you? Are you bringing somebody you cannot trust? And then if you bring somebody you believe you trust, and along the line that person changed and decided not to toe the path of your own way, then allow him. You have finished your tenure, go. Obaseki accused Shomole of trying to have access to the treasury. Why wouldn't we believe that? You are no longer the governor. What do you have to do with what the governor is doing? If the governor is doing something wrong, there is an avenue provided by the law to deal with that. Get to the house, get him impeached, get the issue settled before the house, gross misconduct, follow the procedure to get the governor removed. If the governor is coming for second tenure and you believe he has the right to recontest or he has the right to go for it and compete with other people, let the people, the party members come together and decide who takes the ticket. If the law of APC, the constitution of APC permits Obaseki to go for a second tenure and is qualified to go for a second tenure, let him subject himself to the election proper. Another person that might want to contest with him, let them come up. Don't say you remove a governor, you will do this, you will do that, you start overheating the system. It's not for the good of the people. My colleague said there is a party that will suffer. I humbly, slightly disagree with that. It's the people that suffer. Because at the end of the day, the money meant for development in those states will be used to buying party stalwarts, party chieftains, and all the, instead of now developing the people, you are buying few people, spending billions, and then causing crisis and distracting the governor. Election will come up in 2020. Every day in politics matters. Today, governor will still be doing something, but instead of governor now occupying his minds on how to take care of the goodwill of the people within this Christmas time, what will now preoccupy the mind of the governor is how to be buying people, how to be visiting people, to buy them, to ward them into his own side. And the Shomole of his own will be using the money to buy people. So for me, we should have grown beyond this level in our democracy. Do your tenure, whether your first tenure or second tenure, you have finished your tenure as a governor, go back home. You are a party chairman. For a party that has the ruling party like that, should have a laid down procedure on how to follow up issues. And let all parties subject themselves to that laid down procedure of the party rules. But whatever they do outside the party rules and outside the constitution definitely will be nullified. We saw it in Rivers, and then they had no candidates. We saw it in the Zamfara state, and they had no candidates. So if you are trying to exert a kind of enormous influence because you believe you can do it and get away with it, but remember, just like you read for thunder, he said, while you are sharing the pumpkin, remember thunder. And eventually, after a while, that second thunder, so that was the war. Right. So now, why they do all this? They should remember the court is there watching. You can do whatever you do and bulldoze yourself into power, or however you want it, but the court is watching, and the court will definitely decide.
All right, thank you, Barrister Mokili. Now, Barrister Sarah, let's examine the politics of the faction and the rivalry fueled by rallies within the All Progressives Congress amid the battle of supremacy between the governor, camps loyal to the governor on one hand, and those loyal to the national chairman, Adams Oshiomhole. Now, it has taken a new turn, like I said earlier, with the second coming of Pastor Eze Iyamu and his supporters into the APC. You recall that in 2016, Pastor Eze Iyamu gave Obaseki a tough time at the elections. How do you think the coming of Eze Iyamu would change the politics, or the polity rather, in Edo State at the moment?
Well, for the APC, I think it rather complicates the issue. Don't forget, there are other persons, apart from Eze Iyamu. You have Major General Ariawere, you have Engineer Ogenwoyi, the former minister, and some other stalwarts from Edo South, who are also, I don't think they have dropped their governorship ambition. They are still in the APC. And I don't think the sitting governor has also dropped his ambition. Now, what's going to happen? Now, you want Eze Iyamu to return back to the APC fold, and you do not involve the governor and other APC party members who are in government. You want to stay in Abuja and bulldoze your way and use your Abuja influence to impose your will on the people of on the party. Of course, there will be resistance, and that's what he saw. Don't forget that the governor is the chief security officer of the state, and by convention and the rules of APC, the governor of a state is the party leader of that state.
All right.
Now, it's interesting that when Oshiomhole was governor, another indigene of Edo State, Chief John Odige Oyego, who himself was also a former governor of the state, was the chairman of APC. And he never interfered in the governance of the state. You know, Chief Odige Oyego, complete gentleman. I must say this, that the conduct of Adams Oshiomhole, Comrade Adams, leaves a sour taste in the mouth. And I'm happy, and I want to commend the effort of the Nigerian police for coming, stepping in immediately to stop that rally, because it could have degenerated into a fracas that could have led to destruction of lives and property, and that could have disturbed the peace of Benin and Edo State. And those people are peace-loving people. We don't want the sort of politics Adams Oshiomhole is importing. This is an importation into Edo State politics. We have never had it this way. They don't play godfather politics in Edo State. What they do from history, right from First Republic, during the era of SCNC, Utu Edo, and the rest of them, up to the period of Ambrose Ali, Demas Akpore, Ogbemudia, it's always by consensus arrangement. There was a time during the period of PDP, even though Chief Tom Ikimi Chief Tony Anini, Anthony Anini, was a high-ranking official of the PDP at the national level, but I don't think he behaved this way. Chief Tommy Kimi, who is also from Edo State, at the time was the chairman of the National Republican Party and was a minister of external affairs during the Abacha days. He is also a known figure. At the time, you had the Vice Rear Admiral Augustus Aihomu, also from that state, and then also too Rear Admiral Akigbe, also from that state, and they were all stalwarts of the ruling PDP at that time. They were not lording it over Lucky Igbelejon. They had respect for each other.
All right.
I want to appeal, you see, back to the question that you asked. You see, it's a very dicey situation. You know, Oshomole, as the chairman of APC, under the Constitution and the Electoral Act, the duty to conduct party primaries that will select candidates to vie for gubernatorial position is left for the National Working Committee of the party, headed by, this time around, Oshomole. Okay. Now, do you see Oshomole, put in place systems and machinery, first system and machinery that will lead to the emergence of Obaseki, possibly? And then you also ask the question. Even if they say there should be a reconciliation, are you sure the parties will be genuinely interested in reconciliation?
Yeah, so many questions
now,
there, yeah.
We heard as at last week that a committee was set up, Lawa Committee, that also had as a member the Deputy Speaker, and you saw Obaseki Group, opposing the constitution of that panel. And when you look at it, if you apply the principle of equity and natural justice and fairness, already Lawan and Wase, they are compromised.
All right, thank you.
Because I want to explain why they are compromised.
Quickly, have to do that. We'll come back.
Because you recall at the beginning of the crisis, this latest crisis in May, after the inauguration of the House, both houses of the National Assembly, the Senate and the House of Rep, they passed resolution, laying foundation for the taking over
of the House. All right.
Yes.
All right.
And those sessions were presided over by Lawan at the Senate and Wase in the House of Rep. So already they are interested parties. All right. And the court has told them.
All right. Thank you, Barrister Sarah. We'll continue. Barrister Ode, in your own view, like I said earlier, in 2016, this was a man who gave the governor of the state, Godwin Obaseki, a run for his money. It was a tight race. Now, do you think his desire to become a governor would be achieved, by defecting now to the APC, even with the backing of the national chairman of the party?
Well, I will not be able to give you a yes or no answer. Okay. Because the political atmosphere in Edo State currently, you cannot come up to say, look, going by the current crisis that is ravaging the party called APC, I think all of this is centered around greed, because this politics of cross-carpeting, all because they want power and office is at the center of it all. For example, the story making the round is that Adams Oshomole brought in Pastor Izeyamo just to dislodge the current governor. You understand? So the question is, where the possibility of his winning is what two of my colleagues here have already analyzed. You understand? Because a family not united, a house not united will definitely fall. Currently, the current governor is interested. Pastor Izeyamo is coming to the same party. And now, the Major General is interested. And now, Adams Oshomole, who has called himself the national leader of APC, you understand, is the chairman of APC, is the one that will put the machineries in motion that will bring about that should bring about a fair and just selection of the APC candidates that will stand for that election. And you will agree with me that if any process that's leading to the selection of the candidate of the party is not seen to be free and fair, that it will definitely affect the outcome of the election in that election, the result in that election. So, if for somebody now to say, except if APC within the shortest possible time is able to put their house in order.
And you see the APC doing that?
And I don't see that happening, because already Adams Oshiomhole is like somebody who is drunk with power already. I don't see the possibility of Adams Oshiomhole humbling himself to come down to the level of Obaseki and look, sits on the round table with him and say, look, gentlemen, this is the situation and that is the situation. By the way, what is his reasons for saying Mr. Obaseki should not go for a second term? Why? Is his constitutional right to recontest, for example? And again, two, is that left for the people of Edo State to either vote into power or not? Now, Adams Oshiomhole, Mr. Obaseki, the others should put up the platform where other candidates who are interested in, going to that elective position come to contest. If they dislodge him, good and fine. If they cannot, then it should be allowed to be. So it doesn't make sense.
Recently, let me just quickly chip in this. The national chairman of the APC, Adams Oshiomhole, has said he has made effort to actually, it's not about him, it's about other members of the party who are also not happy with the governor. And he said he has made effort, he named those names to reconcile, these stalwarts of the party with the governor, and he has met brick walls.
But if you look at the history of all this crisis, ravaging Edo State, APC in Edo State, it's not about others who are interested in that position. It's not about any other politicians with Mr. Obaseki. It's about Adams Oshiomhole as the party leader and the current governor of Edo State.
All right.
It's all about power tussle, and that's nothing more.
Okay, Barrister Nwokedi, what's your take?
For me, Adams Oshiomhole should concentrate, like the good example given by Malene Koli about Oyekun. Oyekun is still there. Tony Momo is in that party. Edo State is a state that's populated with so many political stalwarts and so many ex-national leaders, vice president, and other things, both dead and alive. So it's not a place you may just wake up now because it's your turn and then begin to disrupt things, begin to bring in something that is alien to the states, begin to disrupt, because you saw your friend in some states in Nigeria. Your ally did it in one particular state in Nigeria and succeeded, and it's a close friend. You now want to export it to your own hometown to also give one or two excuses and get the governor, deny the governor of a second tenure, and then plant your own. What was obtainable in a particular kind of climb scenario might not play out in another place. It might lead to bloodshed, it might lead to disaster. And the new people I know, because I have a few of them as my client, one or two, they cannot accept that. So Oshiomhole is playing against the tide. He's swimming against the tide. What he should do is, because what he will do now that will finally polarize that state or the party there, is to use his power as the national chairman of the party, to use the National Working Committee to conduct kangaroo kind of primary election and put somebody there. And then the people that might be on the side of governor will definitely, that will not go down well with them. And if adventure he does that without total conformity with the party constitution, which I know the governor might not allow him to get all necessary facts that will tally with the provisions of the constitution in the state, because it's on ground. He also he has his lawyers there that has all gray areas that will not enable Oshiomhole to conduct a free and fair election, even if it comes to the National Working Committee, that will also trap him. So by the time somebody will emerge, then definitely there will be crisis. And this young also, that's what we are saying about Nigerian politics and why people should not die for politicians. Last time he's in PDP, singing PDP anthem, shouting against APC, calling APC all sorts of names, saying all sorts of things against APC, and people followed him, people believed in him, people trusted him because they believed he has his vision tied to the vision of PDP. And what he would do in line with the vision of PDP, that he contested with their tickets. Today he's out of that place. He's not going to APC again. By the time he wants to put him again in APC, what is he going to be saying? He'll start castigating PDP again. That shows you they don't have morals, they don't have scruples, they don't have political structure, they don't have political behavior, they don't have political system, they don't have political culture, ideology, and anything. It is very well. I read his, I used to like be his like admirer. Is he? I didn't know him very well, but I was admiring his courage. But when I learned he was going to APC, I was for what? Has we come down to this level that we must assume a political office at any cost, not minding what we just said previous years? This is something that we have to begin to discourage. Look at what played out in America. Party Pelosi or that woman, Nancy Pelosi acted in line with their own party, Democrats. And Republicans are saying, come to the Senate, we are going to use our own party to deal with you. She said, I'm not going to transmit. I'm not going to transmit very sharp because she knew that these guys there will remain in that party and work according to the party, that they are going to like save their president, who is Donald Trump, according to their own party. And those are the House of Reps there, work according to their own party, Democrats. But Nigeria, we don't see it. Today somebody is PDP, he loses tickets there, he goes to APC, he loses there, he jumps to PDP. And you keep on, people should stop following them. I'm telling the people to stop following Eziyam. He cannot just 2016 singing PDP anthem and then telling us against APC, showing all sorts of things against APC, and today he's there. He has no morals, he has no scruple. He just seeking for power's sake. And the showman should be cautioned. Today he's in power, tomorrow he's out of power. Yes. We have seen so many presidents, even in Africa. This president of Sudan, today he's in prison. Yes. He was almighty. When he was there, he never knew that he will ever be in prison. He has everything at his pick and call. But today he's in prison. When you are in power, don't allow power to intoxicate you. Yes. Allow power to flow, because by doing all these things, like put your hands in so many ways that will enable you to like suppress the governor. You may think that people don't know that. Like Carl facing trial now. If you look at that money he was accused of collecting, $7.something billion. If you look closely, Carl might not have gone home with more than $3.something billion in that money. The rest of the $4.something billion we have spent on people, buying people, suppressing, buying house and buying hooligans and buying. Now, are they in prison with him? No. Whose name is being tainted? All the people he spent that money to buy, to maneuver and manipulate in Abia State for him to become a political lord. Where are they? In their houses, enjoying the money.
All right.
So it's not something that someone should encourage.
Okay.
He should not use his party power and position to go and destroy his states.
All right. Let's look at the State House of Assembly in Edo State declaring vacant the seat of 12 lawmakers elect yet to be inaugurated. You recall that all the 24 state legislators are members of the ruling All Progressives Congress. What do you make of the House resolution to declare their seat vacant?
Well, now the Speaker of the House, when you look at the provision of the Constitution, it will appear to me that he acted in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. Now, if those persons affected, if they are not satisfied, then they can go to the judiciary and seek interpretation of the because when you look at the scenario right from the beginning, and then you begin to, and then you reflect on Oshomole, what he did when he was governor, because we know when he was governor, it was the same thing he did. All the time he worked with minorities. There was a time, he had 9 members, he took them away from the House of Assembly complex into his, more or less his bedroom at Dennis Hadebe House, and instructed the Speaker then to remove the roof so that the majority could not sit. So at the time he worked with 9 members, he worked with 10. So it's always, he introduced that sort of politics in Edo State. And at that time, the PDP at the center, the National Assembly, they did not interfere because they were guided by the provisions of the law. And what Oshomole has been pushing the governor to do, to issue another proclamation, it's not doable. Not having regard to the provisions of the Constitution. For instance, if you look at provision of section 105 of the Constitution, it provides that a House of Assembly will stand dissolved at the expiration of a period of 4 years commencing from the date of first sitting. Now, the power to issue a proclamation is given to the governor. Okay. You say governor should issue a fresh proclamation. Now, if a fresh proclamation is issued today, and the House of Assembly is inaugurated today, it will mean that the first sitting of the House of Assembly of Edo State will commence today, which will disturb the provisions of the Constitution.
So in essence, you're saying these affected lawmakers who have failed to represent themselves to be inaugurated should approach the court, or what?
Yes, approach the court. You see, now when you recall the 8th National Assembly, the inauguration of the 8th National Assembly, when Major General Buhari retired, transmitted the proclamation to the clerk of the National Assembly, appointed the time and place for the House to National Assembly to be brought into being. Some of his party members decided to go to another venue, but as soon as the quorum was formed, they proceeded, and then they went ahead, elected their members, and then all some other members were now sworn in by the president, Senate President then, Senator Ahmed Lawan. There are 24 members. Saraki, Senator Bukola Saraki. There are 24 members of the House of Assembly. By the provision of the Constitution, 1/3 is sufficient for them to
10.
So now 1/3 of 24 is 8.
Okay.
So on the day of inauguration, they had 10. So meaning they could proceed to transact business.
All right.
So and now the Constitution also provides certain number of days that you must sit.
Okay.
So why I'm yet to see any of those members who come out to say that they went to the House and the Speaker refused to inaugurate them.
All right, thank you very much.
It's better that they go in, get themselves inaugurated, and fight from within, than they remain outside. Because the people who elected them, the constituency, they are suffering from lack of representation. All
right, thank you. Barrister Benjamin, what do you make of the declaration of the Speaker of the Edo State House of Assembly declaring the seat vacant?
I think I completely align myself with my brother here, because it's constitutional, and if it's constitutional, if they are not happy about it, they all have the right to go to the court to get it interpreted. That's especially that section of the Constitution.
Okay, Barrister Mukidi.
Same thing here with me, because I think there was some missing was in the front burner when that inauguration took place. I thought it also went to court.
Yes.
And court actually affirmed the decision, the side of the court aligned with the governor's kind of opinion. Because I think governor went to court seeking declaration that a member went to court. Because I know it went to court, and court made a pronouncement. Yes. And that pronouncement was not detrimental to the position of the governor. The court did not nullify that inauguration. And I believe if anything could have been done, they should have proceeded with the court and let there be a judicial pronouncement. Because from every analysis at that point, it was so clear that no law was breached. Even they made mention of the timing, like by 2 midnight or
9 p.m.
or there was no time stipulated by the Constitution upon which they will be inaugurated. There might be emergency, even in America, something may come up and people can sit at any time. They can sit, emergency might come, war might break up. They can sit at any time. So, for you to say that you're wrong, your right has been trampled upon, there was a breach, it has to be in accordance with the Constitution. Once you have gone to the Constitution and discovered that, look, morally, there might be something wrong. But if legally there was nothing wrong, you should know that you have been beaten. And at that point in time, what you should know is to retreat. Yes. And then go back and align with yourself with what law has permitted.
So in essence, in this
instance, they should go back and be inaugurated. And for them to fail to do that, their seat should be declared vacant.
So is it too late for them to go to the House to be inaugurated?
It's not too late if they will change their mind and go back. I think it has been declared vacant
already.
It has been declared vacant already. So they're no longer there. What they should proceed to now do just maybe other INEC to conduct fresh elections and replace them. It's something they took so far. Because I believe they should have legal advisors. That's why we always clamor for people to talk to their lawyers. Their lawyers should have told, if they have sincere lawyers that would not want them to, because some lawyers work according to what their clients tell them to do. Some lawyers say, my client said, I said, no, your client will not tell you what to do. You tell your client what your client should do, because you are a lawyer, you read law. He didn't read law. Whatever he says, you should. They say, my client, this one cannot go. If you want to debrief him, debrief me. But this is what I'm telling you, that will go as a lawyer. So lawyers should tell them, look, you are on the wrong side of the law.
So in this instance, they've done their people the service by not
great
presenting
wrong,
themselves
a great harm. Now what are they going to do? They are not in court. Are they in court now? No.
Yes.
Are they in the house? No. It's a very foolish decision. They've acted foolishly.
All right, you're still watching Democracy and the Rule of Law. Our time is almost spent. We'll take a quick break and be right back. Stay with us. All right, you're welcome back. And if you're just joining us, this is Democracy and the Rule of Law coming to you live from the studios of Galaxy Television, Lagos. Now, let's discuss the arrest of former AGF Adoke. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission on Thursday took into custody former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mohammed Adoke SAN. Adoke was arrested on Thursday after flying into the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport of Abuja from Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, where he had been held by the International Police Organization, Interpol, since November 11, 2019. The anti-graft agency is prosecuting Adoke and a former Petroleum Minister, Danny Tete, for their alleged involvement in the sale of OPL 245, which was sold to Shell Nigeria Exploration and Production Company and Nigeria Ajib Exploration by Malabo Oil and Gas Limited for $1.1 billion. All right, Adoke is expected to defend himself against the charges bordering on conspiracy, forgery of bank documents, bribery, corruption, and money laundering before the FCT High Court and the Federal High Court. Now, his counsel, Mike Ozekume, SAN, is kicking against the EFCC has obtained a court injunction to detain him for the period of 14 days. But he is saying his client chose to come to Nigeria willfully. Why should he be arrested? But let me just take your thought on that, Barrister Nwokedi.
If somebody is suspected of committing a crime on the prima facie form of it, the face value, you are to be subjected to trial. And criminal trials have a kind of process and procedures. And the first one is that you will be like arrested. You'll be like arrested. Let's start from arrest. You'll be arrested. When you are arrested, police will look at issues before you. If a cause of action has arisen from the interrogations at the police, but they have to interrogate you. That's the FCC now. After interrogating you and they feel like, look, there is likelihood of commission of offense or crime, they will detain you. And detaining you have like 48 hours provided by our laws, 24 hours, 40 hours. But if you believe that you still want to investigate a matter, but you have not done thorough investigation, you see one time, you obtain order of court to do that. And then detain that person, warrant that person for like a couple of 14 days. You remember after 14 days, think after another 14 days, you will not renew again. Okay. You must charge the person to court. So now EFCC has actually done that. They've obtained order to detain him for like 14 days, pending when they want to charge him to court. When they charge him to court, it's a criminal trial. He cannot be going to his house from the court. You must be either in detention or he will be arraigned in court and be granted bail. And when he perfects his bail, he will not face his trial. Now, once he has been linked to that offense, he's not left, with due respect to the learned senior advocate, Michael Zekome, whom I respect so much, just the way I respect Falana. It's not left for him to decide whether his client has committed the offense or not. Whether he willfully flew into Nigeria or he was bundled down to Nigeria, the point is that an offense has been committed and his name was linked or is linked to the offense. And the EFCC believed that he has a question to answer, and they somehow arrested him and brought him to answer to those questions. After interrogating him, believed that a course of action, a reasonable course of action has arisen in the course of his interrogation, and therefore he should be kept in their custody, pending when they either, after the investigations, they may decide to leave him to go home, or they may decide to arraign him in court. So it's saying in line with procedures to be undertaken in criminal trial.
All right, thank you for that explanation. And now, Barrister Benjamin, what's your take on the arrest of the former AGF?
I think that
Sorry. That doesn't mean he's guilty already.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Until pronounced by court of competent jurisdiction.
Yeah, I think that these incidents of arresting people, then concluding investigation, is an anathema to our law. It's unconstitutional. Irregardless of whether his name was mentioned or not. That is not the issue. The EFCC had all the time. Why declare somebody wanted when you have not concluded your investigation? So what are they investigating? Let's not get emotional and sentimental about this issue. A former Attorney General of the Federation, that office is a highly conspicuous office, recognized by the Constitution. Somebody occupying that position was accused of having committed an offense involving that quantum amount of money. And the EFCC had declared him wanted since last year.
Even charged him.
And even charged him in absentia. So on what basis was this charged? Now, if you want to compare the arrest, the current arrest and detention of the former Attorney General, Mr. Adoke, and what is happening to Revolution Now Plus, Mr. Showore's arrest and detention, you will know that EFCC are a bunch of confused human beings. They don't know what they are doing. It is high time we tell them that democracy is not practiced the way it is being practiced. This is not democracy. You don't detain somebody
and start fishing for evidence.
You start fishing for evidence. If they should have evidence, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission have no basics whatsoever, haven't declared this man wanted for over such a long period of time, to now say they have gone to court to get an order of court to detain for another 14 days for what? That is inhuman.
All right. Barrister Sarah.
Yes. Now, my take, the whole saga, is that the government, the regime, they know that the general public, they are baying for blood. They are looking for some high-profile government official to be arrested, convicted, and jailed for some. And unfortunately, the EFCC, they appear to be taking Nigeria on a road that is not very clear. Because when you look at the facts of the case, you begin to wonder why blame Adoke, when in actual fact, what Adoke did saved the country humongous sums of money. Now, let's divide it into about 4 places.
You have to
now,
okay.
From Abacha, when Abacha awarded that OVL 245 to himself, because the largest shareholder of Malibu Oil is his son, and we know what that means. Yes. That means was General Sani Abacha. Yes. And the second largest shareholder, Kwame, who later discovered was a Tete. So it was 2 government officials, and then the third shareholder was the wife of Hassan Adamu,
yes,
who was ambassador. These are public officers using their position to convert state properties. That's wrong. When Obasanjo became president, what did he do? He revoked the license without following due process. And then Malibu went to court against the federal, challenging the revocation. And to make matters worse, federal government gave reallocated that OPL to Shell. And Shell had acted as a seismic advisor to Malibu at the time. So Malibu went to court. The federal government had no case. So they settled. They entered into terms of settlement. Meaning, government had now to cancel the revocation. But meanwhile, they had already reallocated to Shell. And meanwhile, Shell had gone to the US for dispute resolution. Yeah. So federal government was faced with a dire situation to avoid the fanfare. Remember fanfare?
Yes.
Alakija, yes. Where Mrs. Alakija, the richest African woman, the same thing federal government, they made serious errors, yes, and the court told them, look, government, once you enter into agreement, learn to respect agreement, rules, and regulation. Right. What Adoke did, they got all the 3 parties together, they resolved the matter, signed an agreement that the federal government merely acted as a facilitator. Money was paid into the account of the federal government. Federal government collected its own signature bonus, which is what they're entitled to anyway. And the rest was disbursed to Malibu. Now, if there are issues that happen between the movement of money legitimately belonging to Malibu, because by law, by judgment of court, Malibu is the right allotee of that. So if there's anything that was untoward, it's now left for the Nigerian government through the investigative machinery to find out. But not on the basis of what they are doing now. And unfortunately, the EFCC, I'm sorry to say, as presently constituted, do not seem to have the mental capacity and understanding, know-how to unravel this high-wired sort of thing. What they are doing, they are leading Nigeria by the nose, leading us astray, making us to believe that, oh, they're actually interested in fighting corruption, where at the end of the day, they have no case whatsoever.
That's
and
right.
The AGF, current AGF, Malami, had written an opinion on this to say that, look, Adoke does not have any case to answer. And there's a judgment of Nyako already on this issue. Say, look, you can't blame Adoke. All that he did, well, in furtherance of his duty. And you know Adoke, he's an international arbitrator and mediator. I've had meetings with him, and I know he's a patriot. So, federal government, we want those who have stolen Nigeria dry to be punished.
That's
And
right.
so we want EFCC, regime EFCC, bring in competent persons who can unravel this crime for us. Don't take us on wild goose chases. At the end of the day, cases are dismissed, and criminals are let off the day. We are tired.
Our time is fast spent. We have to go. Well, at the expiration of the 14 days, we'll see what comes up.
Yeah, he's already going to court.
All right.
They are going to renew. That's what the EFCC, I bet you.
It cannot continue forever. Cannot continue forever. Let me shock you. They will not look. Let me shock you. They will not release him. They will keep. They will. They want to wait. No, like Dasuki. Like actual warrant.
We have
not releasing. They just keep him there. They hold him. They hold him. They cannot work with this one.
Edition of Democracy and Rule of Law. Thank you for watching and thank you for coming on the show. Do join us next Sunday at 1 p.m. for another exciting editions. We'll have a great Christmas ahead. Bye.